Welcome, everyone, to another edition of SCRC's Let's Talk Caregiving. I'm your host, Roberto Velasquez, President and CEO of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and I'm here as always with my co-host, Martha Raynon, our Executive Vice President. Hi, Martha.
Hi, Roberto.
Today's special guest is Irene Miller. Irene has been a caregiver for her husband for 15 years, who is living with Parkinson's disease. Prior to that, Irene cared for her mother, who had Alzheimer's disease. So like many caregivers nowadays, Irene, you've had years and years of caregiving. It's never just one time frame. Usually it's multiple time frames of caregiving. Irene is also very involved with the Parkinson's Association of San Diego. She's a speaker for their Good Start program and serves as a mentor to others. She is also a Parkinson's support group leader and on the North County Parkinson's Support Group Board. I want to welcome you to our podcast here today, Irene.
Thank you, Roberto.
Irene, thank you so much for being here because I know that you are busy. You are so involved with connecting the community to services related to Parkinson's, but you're also a caregiver. And I wanted to see if you can share with us a little bit about your experience, how that has been being a caregiver to someone with Parkinson's disease.
Well, one thing that I have found over the years in caring for my husband with Parkinson's disease and also mentoring a number of Parkinsonians as well as care partners is that we need to look at the situation kind of like a river. It's constantly flowing. Sometimes it's very quiet and melodic and things go as expected. But there can be times where it becomes tumultuous and things become unexpected. Things around the curve that you don't expect to have happen. One of the things about Parkinson's is that it is called the custom disease. In other words, it affects each individual very differently. It's a neurological disease, a movement disorder, but it affects individuals very, very differently. And although they say that there's 5 stages to Parkinson's, the different stages can occur at different times. So somebody that may have more of a diagnosis with dementia, they'll see that dementia portion early on, whereas somebody that's diagnosed with the typical Parkinson's symptoms may only experience gait changes and movement changes. Things become a little slower and stiffer and things like that. And as things progress, some of the other factors come into play, the executive functioning and those kinds of things, and then dementia as well. So it does affect everybody very differently. And for me, what I like to always share with people is to just educate yourself as a care partner. Know everything that you can know. Don't use Dr. Google, but go to specific vetted sites and resources where you get good information. In Parkinson's, would be talking about like Michael J. Fox, Davis Finney, the Parkinson's Association of San Diego, and of course our website, the North County Parkinson's Association. So those are all vetted sites that have good information to help you. But know what's coming. Be prepared. People say, well, I may not want to know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Irene, thank you for sharing that. At Southern Caregiver Resource Center, the vast majority of the family caregivers that we work with are dealing with Alzheimer's and related memory loss, cognitive decline, dementias. Now, I know Parkinson's does sometimes develop into dementia as well, or symptoms of dementia within the Parkinson's process of the disease. And that is actually our second most diagnosed condition that we work with at Southern Caregiver Resource Center. Alzheimer's related dementia and then Parkinson's disease. So we have a lot of families who we work with and help them with caregiver support services and so forth. And I'm just curious because you were a caregiver for your mom who had Alzheimer's, and now you're a caregiver for your husband who is living with Parkinson's disease. What are some of the differences that you recall when you were caregiving for your mom versus now your current caregiving for your husband?
Well, the differences are primarily with my mom who had Alzheimer's. You're dealing with the mental capacity, um, recognition, especially in the latter part of the disease. Um, and where with Parkinson's, you're really mainly dealing with the movement um, difficulties, whether it's actually the walking portion, stability, balance. It can be swallowing, the inability to be able to swallow as the disease advances. Although, that is similar to also with Alzheimer's. They forget how to swallow, but the biggest difference for me is that as her daughter and primary caregiver at the time, um, it, it's different than caring for my husband. How is it different? It's really hard to say how it's different. It is different. Um, I think it's because maybe the expectation. I expected to care for my mother as she advanced, and got older. We didn't know she had Alzheimer's at the time, but it's kind of the family mentality, I guess, in our family and also in kind of the Asian tradition family unit. So that was expected. But whereas with my husband here, he's my partner for life. Um, it, you kind of expect things to be the same, but then you come to the point where you realize it can't be anymore.
Irene, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about a couple of caregivers that I've spoken with who are caring for individuals with Parkinson's disease. And in talking to them, I get the sense, kind of what you were saying, right? That there wasn't this expectation that they were going to be caring for their partners with Parkinson's disease. But there's also a reluctance to accept this diagnosis, and as a caregiver, as a care partner, to be able to help in the way that is needed, because the person is still might still be very independent, and of course they might still be cognitively aware and knowledgeable what's happening, but there's this conflict of, I can still do things for my own. You don't need to help me. But you, as the care receiver, the partner, or the spouse, are noticing that they need more help. So I remember talking to this one in particular, and I was talking to this person about getting connected to services. And she said, I can't help my husband because my husband doesn't think that he needs help and doesn't want me to be the one to help him. And it was very clear that he needed assistance, but there was a reluctancy. Do you find that in the people that you work with, that you talk with about Parkinson's? Is that something that is very common?
Yes, it's very common. Initially, there's denial about the disease, and then there's the denial of being able to function as they used to. I mean, the individual who's affected um, thinks of themselves and wants to think of themselves as being fully capable. But as a care partner, you realize that um, they're not, and they may endanger themselves if you allow them to continue to think that way. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've been asked by a number of people, well, what do you do in that case? What I always recommend is, you know, get a third party involved. to help, because sometimes the care partner is too close to the situation and the individual doesn't want to listen to them. They think they know better. But that's when you can reach out to maybe a good friend of your person you're caring for to talk to them, um, the relationship that they have. And sometimes it could be their physician. Those are possibilities.
Yeah, Irene, thank you for sharing that. I know that that is a common theme among caregivers. Is my mom doesn't listen. She doesn't think that there's anything wrong. My brothers and sisters don't believe that the situation is as bad as it is. Those kinds of things. And I think one of the really important things, and one of the things that you touched on, is talking to someone else or getting some other people involved. And that's what we specialize here at Southern Caregiver Resource Center. When our family consultants are working with the family caregivers, not only do they do a very thorough assessment of the needs of the caregiver, whether that be emotional needs or resources that they might need, or um, educational programs that might be really appropriate for their specific unique situation. As you were talking about the custom disease, we customize for the individuals, but also because they're getting um, consult from professionals. Our family consultants are licensed clinical social workers and or social work master's level social workers, and they are working with them and teaching the family caregiver maybe even how to hold a family meeting, how to uh, ask for help, how to communicate what's happening in a more appropriate manner to maybe mitigate some of the emotions that come from having to deal with family, or we oftentimes things can go sideways and then all of a sudden there's some dysfunction happening over the issue of caring for somebody, right? I mean, which is kind of an oxymoron. You're caring for somebody and yet you have problems communicating with the individual. So the professionals are very important to get involved in.
Yes, I totally agree with that, Roberto. So important. And thinking about too, um, you mentioned a family that doesn't believe that mom or dad or whoever doesn't need help, that they're okay. What I always suggest is, hey, why don't you take them for a day, you know, and see, because when you see the individual, it may be for an hour at a time, but hey, give me some time, some respite, and enjoy mom or dad or whoever that person might be, brother or sister, for the day. Take them for a day. Or you want to try an overnight. Then you can really see for yourself what we're talking about.
I totally agree, Irene. I think that is very eye opening for family members to experience that firsthand because it's nothing like seeing it for yourself when family members finally realize, oh, things are different. And that role reversal, we're going from a partner to now a caregiver, and even from a child going to becoming almost like the parent that's taking care of that individual. I wanted to also ask you, Irene, because a lot of times partners or individuals, they don't think about what it might look like down the road, and as the disease progresses, things get a little bit more challenging, and there is a decrease in the abilities of that individual. So how does a person prepare? How does a caregiver, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about, asking their doctors, asking their family members to prepare for?
Well, what I always suggest is, or to the care partner, is that you really are the eyes and ears to help advocate for your partner. So it's a good idea to take notes of things that you observe, whether it's in a journal or in your phone. But that's what I do is I make notations of changes or things that I notice that I want to bring up and discuss with the doctor when I go there. Often you don't remember when you're sitting there in front of the doctor, so it's always a good idea to have that already prepared and just keep a running journal of things that you notice, because that's when the doctor can get involved and help with some suggestions, whether it's some additional new therapies, or medications. There's so many new things that are developing now, especially for people with Parkinson's, that an individual care partner may not know about unless they're very connected through a support group or through just learning on their own through resources that are out there. But there is so much research going on with Parkinson's now, and it's important.
Yeah, Irene, you mentioned just a little bit ago about having families come and give you a hand, like staying with the individual so that you can get some respite. And one of the things that we also provide is respite care for family caregivers. On top of that, and the bigger topic of respite is self-care, right? Self-care, respite helps the caregiver get some self-care. You get to get away. You get to go for a walk. You get to go take a nap, whatever you might be doing during respite. Self-care is so important. Would you agree? And what do you tell family members, or how do you do some respite or self-care for yourself? Because that's something we're always preaching. And I know Martha teaches this in almost every single class that she has
Mm-hmm.
about the importance of self-care to preserve you as a caregiver.
Well, I definitely is something that I talk about a lot. It's a priority, and you have to make it a priority when you're a care partner. Um, it's not something that you do because you have time or somebody offers you the time. It's something you do because you need to do it for yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't very well take care of your partner very well. So it's a priority, whether it's an hour a day or uh, you know a whole day, whatever it looks like. You need to do that. And I tell people, stay connected with your friends and your hobbies. You know, what brings you joy, make sure you're still doing that. Don't allow that disease or the fact that you're a caregiver now interfere with that. And it sounds, well, wait a minute, that kind of sounds selfish, some people tell me, because, you should be devoting 100% of your time to your partner. Well, I just tell them, hey, if I don't take that time, I'm going to be angry. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
feel tired. I'm going to be depressed. But mostly, I think what comes out and manifests itself in myself is the kind of frustration and anger when I don't take the time. So I have seen as things progress that that's probably one of the most important things you can do for yourself, along with the positivity that you remain as positive as you can throughout the journey.
Staying connected is so important. And I know that there's even been studies that show that people who live in isolation, especially caregivers who live in isolation, actually are at greater risk for developing some of the things that you mentioned, like depression, anxiety, and for long periods of time, even linked to memory loss and dementia. So staying connected is incredibly important for everybody, not just caregiving, but especially for caregiving. And Martha, you teach so many self-care classes,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all on video. I mean, right? I mean, there's just so many things that people can do. And as you said, whether it's a few minutes or an hour, it doesn't matter. You got to incorporate that into your life.
Absolutely. And that is why I'm so glad that Irene, you mentioned that coming from you as a caregiver, as a person who's caring for someone with Parkinson's disease and having cared for someone who had Alzheimer's disease, if we don't take the time, whether or not you're in that situation, even just as a working adult, as a parent, if you don't take the time for yourself, then at the end of the day, you are so bogged down, you're so stressed, you're not in the right frame of mind that everything becomes frustration and anger and bleak. And that's why I think it is so important that we incorporate and it doesn't have to be a vacation to Hawaii, although I'd be the first one to sign up for that one. But we could just take 5 minutes to just sit out in the sun, enjoy the breeze, something that kind of replenishes ourselves.
So true.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have left for this edition of Let's Talk Caregiving. To hear more of our podcasts, follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms or visit our website at scrc.care. I want to thank Martha for co-hosting another important discussion, our guest, Irene Miller, and our audience for tuning in. If you're providing support to a loved one, you don't have to do this alone. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. To connect to our programs and services, visit our website at scrc.care or call us at 1-800-827-1008. If you live outside of San Diego and Imperial counties, visit caregivercalifornia.org to connect to the Caregiver Resource Center nearest you. To support our efforts and make a tax-deductible donation, please go to scrc.care and click on the Donate tab. And remember, SCRC is here for you,
Caring for those who care for others.